In DC, a collective of sex workers, organizers, and allies are working to decriminalize sex work, a move that experts say would drastically reduce harm and improve the lives of those in the sex trade. When covering issues that affect sex workers and the marginalized members of our communities, the media must listen to those who speak from experience.
In DC, we're fighting for the decriminalization of sex work because what it does is it removes the criminal penalties associated with trading sex.
We focus on decriminalization because in general, we recognize that criminalization and policing, period, is harmful, very, very, very harmful to our communities.
Some people choose to do sex work and enjoy what they do. Some have no other option and turn to sex work for survival. Others are using sex work to transition into traditional work. Regardless of the circumstances that brought them to the sex trade, everyone deserves to feel safe in their work.
A lot of people have sex. And there's a certain, if people want to pay for sex, why not? A lot of people enter sex work because they need money. Assuming that everyone is coerced clouds the real obstacles that survival sex workers have faced and why they are pushed into sex work. And if our goals are to make our communities safer and more just for everyone, we have to understand where everyone's coming from. And we have to take this nuanced approach.
This nuanced approach requires recognizing that especially for Black and brown trans women, sex work is often the only option.
48% of DC business owners are going to hire a cisgender woman, period.
Black and brown people, as well as queer and transgender non-conforming people, are often marginalized when trying to access employment, healthcare, housing.
It doesn't matter that I have a college degree. They're looking at you as being a distraction instead of someone qualified to do a job.
I was never given a chance, even from the beginning. I was never given a chance because when I, as a Black trans woman, walk into an establishment and want to be productive and seek employment and stuff like that, then a lot of times people will discriminate us and not want to give us a chance.
Most transgenders we want to go to college. We want the same opportunities as our cis counterparts get.
The average life expectancy for a Black trans woman in America is 35 years old. Black trans women experience violence from the police and the community at large at alarming rates.
I was stabbed over 48 times in Southeast DC. I'm constantly looking back.
Criminalizing sex work increases violence against sex workers, and particularly increases police violence against sex workers. Sexual assault is the second most common form of police brutality.
There was a national transgender survey that said that 9 out of 10 trans people reported having experienced police brutality and harassment. Police officers target people who are in the sex trade.
A percentage of policemen, or the people that are out there locking us up, use us. Now look at that.
I've been picked up by a police officer before, and I've been told that, if you give me this or you're going to jail.
Police officers argue that they have the right to have sex with sex workers as evidence of a crime. So they sexually assault sex workers in order to arrest them.
I had been raped, but never did I go and tell a police officer that I was raped, because of the simple fact that it was a trick that raped me.
When sex workers are criminalized, they are unable to report abuses because they remain at risk of arrest. And when sex workers experience violence at the hands of their clients, they have nowhere to turn. Criminalization reinforces the barriers already in place for many Black and brown women.
The problems in my life that led up to my criminal history all started because I had no other choice but to go out here and prostitute. You lock a person up and then you let them out, back out to the streets, they back to point A. So now where do they go? They turn back to those closed doors, go back to those streets.
If you're already living from pillar to post, or you're living in a hotel room, you lose everything.
When you decriminalize, you need to take away the criminal penalties that came because of sex work. It keeps people from transitioning from the sex industry to a traditional job.
You make me a criminal for survival. And then now that I'm a criminal, I can't get a job. But in the first place, I couldn't get a job because I was me.
The system has set them up to fail. This includes those who are trafficked. Trafficking victims are more often than not marginalized people.
It's usually foster youth, youth experiencing homelessness. It's usually youth who have been kicked out by their families because of rejection over their queer or trans identities, or kids who have experienced violence in the home, either sexual abuse or physical abuse by parents or caregivers. So that was actually my experience when I was 15. I was on the street, and the only people who were going to take me in were men who wanted to have sex with me. The problem was homelessness. The problem is vulnerability, but nobody wants to talk about that or talk about solutions to that problem. It's always like, well, let's rescue trafficking victims with no conversation about what happens next.
And because consenting sex workers are criminalized, they do not feel safe to guide trafficking victims to safety.
If we change the system from the current way it is and decriminalize, we'll be better suited to help to guide the police and whatever other core agencies need it be to help to transition them from being trafficked into whatever position they choose to be.
Sex workers are the ones who are most likely to be trafficked, and therefore most likely to know who in the sex trade doesn't want to be there and then could be a resource.
In 2003, New Zealand fully decriminalized sex work. The law was written in collaboration with sex workers and advocates. Sex workers know that legalization creates a two-tiered system where only a privileged class is able to afford to legally participate in sex work. Under decriminalization, sex workers are allowed accountable bosses, collective working, and workers' rights. They can refuse a client at any time and don't fear retaliation from abusive law enforcement officials.
Legalization is a completely different thing and could actually be harmful for the sex workers at the margins. So particularly people experiencing homelessness wouldn't be able to meet the regulations or meet any requirements set by regulations.
It's important not to erase the experiences of those doing sex work simply because they enjoy what they do. Those folks are deserving of the same protections.
It's just like saying if I'm a good knitter, and I'm at home, I knit all the time, but that's just my hobby. But then the next person that might be good at knitting and who has made it a hobby might be thinking that it's a good trade, a good job for them. You know what I mean? Because they can knit stuff all day and get paid. And so some people might feel that way about sex. It's all a home ec.
Because I'm having sex, it's a big problem. People look at it like it's just the dirtiest thing, but excuse me, how did you all get here?
Until oppressive systems are abolished, people, particularly trans women of color, will need sex work to survive. Until at-risk youth are provided with resources that keep them off of the streets, they'll be at risk of being trafficked. And as long as humanity exists, there will be a demand for sex, and some people will choose to do sex work because they enjoy it. This is the reality, and criminalizing sex workers causes harm to everyone involved in the trading of sex, no matter their circumstances. The media must recognize the nuances of the issue, listen to sex workers, and report the facts about the dangers of criminalizing our communities.
I think that the media should definitely spotlight it. Nobody knows like a person knows from experience.
There's literally no way to know why people are doing what they do or what we can do to better support people and make everyone feel safe unless we talk to people who are experiencing it.
Start by framing the problem as a problem of vulnerability, a problem of homelessness. I think the media can help by framing, moving away from the perfect victim narrative.
The media doesn't have anybody to talk to but us.